കുറിച്ചിട്ടുള്ള പ്രധാനമായിട്ടുള്ള മീറ്റ് ദ ആർട്ടിസ്റ്റ് പ്രോഗ്രാമാണ് നടക്കുന്നത്. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Meet the Artist program session, the 15th International Theatre Festival today. We have a lot of pleasure to invite you, both the groups. First, we would like to invite Nilaman Singh Chowdhury of the Hayavadana, and theatre practitioner Taneja will, have a conversation with her. Welcome you, Taneja, and ma'am, and your group also, if you're fine.
Singh Chaudhary. Just a correction, my name is not Taneja, my name is Mallika, and then the Taneja. This is the first time you have presented work at ITFOK?
I've been to ITFOK for many, many years. Almost every year I've been here, but this is the first time I've showcased my work.
And how does it feel? I know this is a very strange question to ask, but this is a very particular and special festival.
Well, I think Kerala is such a special place. It's the only place which has one of the best theatre festivals, which is ITFOK. It showcases works from many parts of the country and many parts of the world. It has courage. It has a commitment to the arts, which is very overwhelming, especially in the present times of polarization and divisive politics and brutality that we see all around us. And I believe, from what I've heard, that this year it was cancelled because the dates got changed, and how the artists of the state protested and the government actually listened. To us, it's become such a rare phenomena that it's overwhelming to know the kind of support the arts have in Kerala.
Yeah, absolutely, and it was really cancelling and then a coming back and then a real struggle to put this festival together, but it's really, I think, it really says something, that it is here and we are here and we are having this conversation. We had a very full house yesterday at Hayavadana, huge. It is such a big visioned play, your version of it. I wanted to actually start off by asking you a little bit the question of adaptation, like how have you adapted this modern classic, the departures you've made from the original, particularly one of splitting the role of the woman into two. If you could speak to this a little bit.
Well, the reasons why you do certain things are so much intuitive, and sometimes they're not really fit within the space of logic or explanation. But I felt Padmini was such a complex character that I wanted somewhere when I was asked to double cast. And I have a certain problem with double casting. In an innate resentment to double casting a character. So this became not a double cast, but this became like trying to explore the various layers, the various subterranean journeys that the character was going through herself by this conflict between the body and the mind.
What it kind of visually sort of also upsets something, whereas you see four bodies, 2 men and 2 women actually, instead of 3, 2 and 1.
Yeah.
And this is an interesting sort of disruption to how Karnad has written also the play.
Also, I did a lot of changes. I edited the text hugely, because even though it's magic realism, but as Marquis says, what you call magic realism, I call realism. So it is actually a play written within the format of realism, but it explores mythology, it explores desire, perhaps for the first time when India was finding its own identity as in playwriting or searching for a idiom which they would call modern Indian drama. Within that, a lot of people dipped into what they thought was Western ways of writing a play, whether it was Aadhi Adhure or whether it was the existentialist Badal Sarkar. But somewhere Hayavadana, and for that some other directors as well, tried to explore through mythology to find that which is contemporary. Because I think we cannot think of mythology as belonging to some kind of vague past. It's got very much to do with that which is fundamental to human experience, which is love, beauty, jealousy, sexuality, desire, power, hate. That the question of contemporaneity ceases to exist. So I thought it was it was a play which I could relate to. It's a search for perfection, and perfection to me is a futile search. So in that whole journey of building the play, which I do very much in collaboration, like all work that I do is collaboration. The actors are much participants in the whole structuring of the play or the building of the scene, as is the actor, as is the director. So we try to create a more egalitarian space. We try, but it's not that I'm not the outside eye which is watching and observing. So yes, even in the end, when I saw the play, when I was in the National School of Drama, done by Satyadev Dubey, with Amol Palekar as Devadatt and Amrish Puri as Kapil, I felt it was not okay to have Sati, even in 75, because in the end, she says, they both have a duel and they fight, and then she says, अब मैं किसकी चिता पे जलूंगी, मैं तो 7 जन्मों का वो मांग भी नहीं सकती, So it just seemed that Girish Karnad had taken a very bold theme, and yet in the end he became a traditionalist. This is not a critiquing, this is actually critiquing of the times. It didn't work for me from any angle. So I changed the end. I wasn't trying to make any kind of definitive political statement, or I wasn't holding the flag for some kind of feminist ideology. It's just the way I don't see things. So yes, there was a little bit of changes in the text, which I got clearance from the Girish Karnad Foundation, so that there is no aftermaths or consequences that I will have to deal with. And also I had 2 wonderful actors, Ipshita and Brinda. So maybe it would be interesting to ask them what they thought of the split, because it's difficult for them. You have to avoid overlapping, you've got to avoid where they all find their own space, where they find their own connections with the protagonist. So it's tough more for the actor. I can say, come on, we're going to have 2 Padmanis, but they have to deal with it, physicalize it, concretize it, create meaning.
It's an interesting thing you say about disagreeing with Karnad's end. I get reminded of a small shift Tripurari had made on Aadhi Adhure when she ends the play and she leaves the spotlight on Savitri. And that's how she chose to end the play. And I think it's different when women read these scripts, women makers read these scripts, and how women look at the world and then how they make theatre. I think it is very different than how men do. Pardon the binary in which I'm talking.
I think in a certain way, when women entered the theatre, it was a very silent kind of entry. It didn't come in any band baja barat, it was just a silent entry. And nobody took them seriously. But suddenly, epic characters like Tughlaq and Ashwathama were not what they were exploring. They were exploring the little things in life, the washing of clothes, the cooking. I don't mean it as a drudgery, but as an imagery to their lives, and making those into epic moments. That the everyday life also contains within itself epic events. large events. So not to trivialize the daily, what you would call the daily mundane chores, but to make the familiar unfamiliar, as Brecht would say.
And I'm reminded of Kitchen Katha, actually, your other work, when you're saying this, where such domestic is brought to the stage in such marvel and pomp and celebration almost, and it was very very inspiring to watch when I watched it many years ago. If I may ask a question about language, and here if I may also pull, please come, the actors, because subtitle is a very big part of how theatre is done now. But I remember watching play after play after play in Bharangam in very many languages with absolutely no subtitle. And this is a new addition in the way we are doing. And yesterday we did a 100-minute play in Hindi, in a non-Hindi speaking part of the country. And I just wanted to know what you think about it, and especially how the actors felt about it. The Sutradhar, I think, had a tough time with landing some jokes, and it can be hard.
Well, I think that if I want to say it truthfully, the subtitles never arrived. The person who was supposed to do the subtitles got sick and went into some remote control mode. So I don't know what happened. I thought they were here because I was initially in the conversation. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just handing her the mic.
So I think that was a slight shock to me because I have been to ITFOC for the last 8-9 years continuously, and I know that subtitling is mandatory. But this time, it just didn't happen. And I just thought, well, I'm at a disadvantage, but nevertheless, here we are. Let's see how it's received.
यस, जैसा मैम ने कहा कि सबटाइटल्स का वेट कर रहे थे, तो ये जो इन्फॉर्मेशन थी एज अ सरप्राइज़ हमारे सामने आई. हमारे सूत्रधार ने भी डायरेक्ट लाइन बोली कि हमारे पास सबटाइटल्स नहीं हैं, प्लीज़ पे अटेंशन. उन्होंने ये लाइन टेक्स्ट में डाली. और अब जब हम थिएटर कर रहे हैं, जैसे मैम ने भी बोला, इतने सालों से सबटाइटल एक मैंडेटरी पार्ट है. पर आई ऑल्सो कनेक्ट विद द फैक्ट दैट लैंग्वेज इज़ नॉट अ बैरियर. So before every show we have this little ritual where we do our puja and all, and ma'am in the last moment, whatever kind of instructions or observations she shares in that time, she said subtitles are not there, but don't worry. If you are truthful and you are containing the meaning within your bodies, it will reach to the audience. And that was the thing that I hold on to personally, that okay, it's like that. And personally I also feel sometimes I have seen many plays. I got this opportunity to watch different plays in Delhi, Bharangam, or abroad, or all over India we travel. Sometimes language really doesn't matter. There is this other language that human shares, and I believe that these human experiences all over the world are somehow similar. The emotions we feel, whatever, jealousy, love, or the consciousness that we all share is somehow connected to a larger whole, let's call it universe. Or so maybe I don't know the language, but I can see the person, what he is feeling. The very first thing when I went to the repertory company with ma'am, the first thing she said was, I want to hear you thinking. from there it all started connecting for me. Said that I must see you thinking, I must hear your thoughts. So yeah, that's how we समझौता किया हमने अपने साथ. Okay, this is it, what it is, let's go for it. Yeah, thank you.
इसमें कुछ ऐड ऑन करना चाहता हूँ बस. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल दिस इज़ माय फर्स्ट टाइम इन इट फोक एंड थैंक यू नीलम मैम. जैसा कि जैसे शुरुआत में पता चला नीलम मैम ने बताया कि वी डोंट हैव सबटाइटल एंड ऑल, तो एक इम्प्रोवाइजेशन वही मेरा तैयार हुआ था कि करते हैं, देखते हैं कि इनको एक बार दिमाग में ऑडियंस की तरफ डाल देना ज़्यादा ज़रूरी है कि वी डोंट हैव सबटाइटल, जो सो जस्ट बी केयरफुल and be ready to take us with yourself. And I tried somehow, कुछ जगह मैंने किया कि मैं पीछे जाता था प्रदीप से पूछने. एक आप यहाँ पर वॉलंटियर हैं हमारे साथ, प्रदीप. उत्तर क्या है, उत्तरेंदा इल्ले. सो जस्ट कि हमसे जुड़े वो बैरियर टूटे, वो लैंग्वेज बैरियर जो हमारे और उनके बीच. और ये क्वेश्चन हमसे ज़्यादा पूछने से बेहतर है ऑडियंस से ज़्यादा पूछना कि उनके लिए कितना मैटर किया या नहीं किया, कि उन तक पहुंची या नहीं बात हमारी, कि क्या लैंग्वेज बैरियर उनके लिए थी या नहीं. हम तो वही किए हैं जो मैडम ने कराया था. थैंक यू. हाँ, अगर था तो हम नेक्स्ट टाइम सबटाइटल लेके आएंगे ज़रूर.
Okay. I really didn't think much about the subtitle because honestly, we do another play in which we all are sitting and saying all the languages from North, and we have performed that play in South also. And we don't move, there's no set, there's nothing, it's only 6 actors we say, and we are confident enough that they'll understand what we say. So here we were actors, there was set, there was music, there was so much of emotional things happening on stage. So I was honestly very confident that no, we will get through the audience and audience will understand what we are trying to say. And so yeah, I didn't have any trouble on that front. And for Padmini, when we started off with the play, I was the one always fighting with ma'am that if it is about 2 men, 1 woman, why are we splitting the women? And she was always ki, I know even if I put 2 more Padminis, they will play their own Padmini. I want to see all shades of a woman. All shades. I know what your destination is, but how you are reaching your destination. I want to see everything. You perform your, and she'll perform hers. But then we have a symphony on stage. Almost when you are speaking, it's a song. But I want to hear, because if you talk too much, I don't hear you. So you have to be very careful what you say, when you say. But I want both of them. And you play your own bit. So it was a struggle, and I think with every show we are actually finding new things, and it's every time we finish our show and I and Brinda are on backstage, aaj kuch naya mila na, haan, aaj kuch purana bhul gaye na. It's always like that. It's fun, and I think this is the challenge an actor always wants to have, that every show is new for them. So yeah.
If I may ask you to speak a little of the scenography. It's so hard to miss.
I've been working with Deepan Shivanathan, who's from Thrissur and is a scenographer and a very fine director. We've collaborated on Bitter Fruit, Naked Voices, Lemon Soda, and Hayavadana. I think there's one more which I may have skipped. So we have a great, as I said, to me, all art is collaborative. There is no single person who creates a play. It is a collective. It is a It is a group dynamics which you have to be very careful in terms of the choices you make, in terms of the people that are part of that collective. Not that they have to be on the same page. I like contradictions. I like, as Walt Whitman would say, I contradict myself. I contain multitudes. So I like it when the actors argue and when the actors give me a feedback and when the actors say it's not working for them, and then we can have a conversation. So Deepan came to see a couple of rehearsals in Chandigarh where we were rehearsing, and I'd put a series of trunks at the back because I don't like actors to make an exit and come on stage. Because I feel the moment they make an exit, it's an interruption in the flow of the continuity of their character or their emotions, or I like them all to be visible. So I had these, I've been working for the last 35 years, so I have lots of trunks with costumes, so I just put them as a backdrop in various shapes and sizes, painted trunks, plain trunks, and the actors were sitting on those trunks while the rehearsal was going on. So when he saw it, that they made the exit by going back on the trunks, then he was staying with me, and then I'd just come back from Pakistan and brought a painted truck, which Pakistan is very famous for. And he saw that truck lying in the veranda, a small little truck. I think that kind of clicked. So he said, we'll have a truck. It'll be a traveling company. I said, are you crazy? I'm not bringing a truck on the stage. I was very diffident. I was very timid about his scale of working, because my scale has always been more miniaturesque. But he does it so well, and does it so quietly, and does it so non-confrontationally, that before you know, the truck is there. And then the truck has to move. So I think, in a certain way, the whole concept of it being a traveling I kept saying, let's have a gadda like the Sri Kasam. So I was trying to scale down the sense of how it should move. But, when you work in the spirit of allowing or giving the space to the other person, his imagination also to assert itself in the production. And scenography doesn't mean a set designer. It's a new term that one has started hearing in India for the last couple of years, which means that they also participate in many other dimensions of the play. So it's wonderful to work with him, and I'm grateful that Bhumija could give us the scale to work in this kind of way. Because where can somebody running a small little company on no grants think of transporting trucks and so many actors, etc., etc. So I think it all became part of the whole process. Just like the actors move and you compose the actors on the stage, in the same way as I remember reading this about Utpal Dutt many years ago, that even the set must move. So it fitted into my concept of what I'd read when I was your age.
And a final question from me before we open it to the audience about the music. It is such a musical extravaganza. It has so much beauty and joy in the music, and how the actors participate with the music, but also how the musicians deliver it. If you could speak a little bit about that.
This is the original music of B.V. Karanth. I worked in Bharat Bhavan for about 5 years with him, and till he passed away in 2001, he composed all the music of my plays. So I've been very fortunate that I've had such wonderful stalwarts who have actually believed in my journey and helped my journey to grow in manners which I had never imagined or never aspired for either. So he did Hayavadana in Bharat Bhavan, where I worked with him at the Rang Mandal Repertory. So I remember him composing it with Amod Bhatt, and being, even after 30 years or 40 years, some of this music rolled in my head. I found the music so powerful. So I got the rights to use the same music, and Karanth was one of my best friends. He was my mentor, my teacher, but I really considered him my co-collaborator in my journey in theatre. He designed the songs for Kitchen Katha, for Nagamandala, for Fedra, for Unposted Love Letter, for Sheher Meri Deepaga. I mean, he designed, whatever work I did, Karanji was an inevitable aspect of that play. Just like Surjit Patar, one of the most famous poets of Punjab, was part of my world. So I was just lucky, I would say. Not that I had anything for them to be nice to me. But I recast the music. Even though the music was fabulous and I could have done it as it is, but I wanted to bring in some new instruments, like the saxophone. There's something very haunting to me about the saxophone. You know, somebody sitting like a lone ranger playing the saxophone. Then I brought in other sound patterns. Then I sort of recast the music by also placing it differently. So, and then when the truck came, the musicians sat on top.
Thank you very much, and thank you. And if there are any questions from the audience, I think we have around 5 minutes, 7 minutes.
ചോദ്യങ്ങൾ, if there is any question, please answer.
It was a very interesting play that I have seen yesterday. I don't have any background in Hindi. I cannot understand Hindi. So, as a person, as an audience, as a layman, I was a little worried about whether it will communicate to me or not. But of course, in the introductory part that has been narrated to us, that the story is this. And as theatre persons, we all know that, you know, there is a text called Hayavadana, and it is well discussed because we know the person who wrote about the script. So in that sense, even with a background, there are so many nitty-gritties which a normal person can't understand without Hindi background. However, the players, I mean the actors, has tried their level best to communicate with us. And it was a very marvelous experience. Going back to the discussions that is here, you have mentioned about mythology, and mythology is important part of the play, and also you made it very interesting or very important to play out the characters that you have. But my question is that in these times of politics, Indian politics that you have mentioned about, the one of the weapons that the right force uses is the mythology. And when you bring the mythology again on the stage, do you think that some part of, rightist notions that is there in Indian psyche reproduces in some other way on the stage? That's one question. The second question which I would thought of asking you is about see, when you think about performances and then say that, performances is universal, and then, its language is performance, not any scripted language. We can say all about very well, fine. But see, you have played a play based on a text scripted in a language. It's a language. Then there is a language that is prominent there. Then based on that text, you make your performances. So how can you think about just scripted language disappears? How can you justify it? And if there is a disappearance of the script, in any language, then what is the mode of that disappearance? In that disappearance, what is the role of the audience to play? See, one advantage we have in this kind of space is that we all somehow connected with theatre. So there is a theatrical lens that we have as audience, most of us, or 70% of us. But could you think about that 30% of the audience who just come in? Oh, there is a play, just coming. And then how do you communicate with them? I'm not talking about, I'm not talking about that you have played it in another language. No, I don't have any problem with the language. But if there is a way to overcome it, and what is the modality of it? Sometimes it could be a way forward to speak many languages. That would be one possible thing which I see many directors do. One will in one language and another character is in another language. See, there is then these kinds of cultures that come together. That's how do you respond to that comment? This is my second question.
I'll answer the first one,
Yeah.
and then I'll come to the second one. I think in a certain way there's mythology and mythology. This is about a woman's desire. It's based on Thomas Mann's Transposed Heads, which is a search for perfection, which is a metaphysical journey that we all try and make. It is about mind over matter, which is about duality, which is about pluralism. So it deals with a different kind of, it doesn't deal with Ram and Sita and, you know, the mythological characters that we have in mind when we talk about the politics of today. So it deals with, because mythology and folk tales, it's not mythology, it's actually a folk tale. Folk tales contain a different kind of truism, which don't belong to some kind of vague past, but they carry it as metaphors, as imagery into our present. We are repositories of that. And how they spill out into our workspace is something else. So I was dealing with duality, not so much with and then these are devices that have been used by the director, by the playwright in a storytelling format. The changing of the heads, the search for perfection. So it's more a philosophical concept than I think a mythological concept, personally. That's how I saw it. And it is metaphorized by the image of the half horse, half man and his story. So that's my response to the first question. I'm not playing into the hands of some forces which are trying to research a certain kind of idea of how mythology should be seen. This is actually based on a folk tale from Karnataka. Hayavadana is a famous tale, like many Aesop's tales of Panchatantra. The second question, I fully agree. But there's no justification, there's no explanation. It was between the organizers, that not Kerala organizers, but the producers of our play, who actually didn't send it on time. And the slides could not be made. There's no justification. It was a big error. It was a big disappointment to us also. But what do you do about glitches which are not in your hands? I'm not justifying it, but there was that anxiety that how will it reach the audience, because it is, as you very rightly said, a text-based story. Because it is a text-based story, we were dealing with that tremendous impediment for which I can offer no excuses. Just hope for your indulgence.
Any questions?
We didn't have any, because subtitles have to be made into slides. And it was the responsibility of somebody else in the team to do it. I just thought they had reached.
Okay. I would like to answer the second question. Um, as actor, I feel that there's a text, there's the audience, and in between is the actor. When actor sees the text and when the actor starts performing it, the text disappears. The actor becomes your text. And you hear and you see the actor. I think it's similar to, because Anurupa is sitting here, and when I was NSD, I still remember, I saw her puppet. For the first time, I saw a puppet perform, and there was no dialogue, there was no actor, there was the puppet. And I could hear and see what the puppet was saying. I don't know how a puppet speaks, but I could see and hear what the puppet was speaking. So I think the language does not matter if the emotion is true, because the emotion translates onto that figure that you see on stage. And yesterday, I think it was our responsibility to make you all travel through the journey that we were experiencing, and where the language should not have been the barrier. And if it was not a barrier, that means we succeeded doing it without a subtitle. That's it.
Also, as Ritvik Khatak said, that there is content, there is social and politics in every film that he makes. Then there is philosophy, and then there is the X factor. So text is one dimension of the other layers that also exist in any piece of work or any piece of connection or communication which an artist has with his audience. Like in a painting, in an abstract painting, in a Kandinsky or a Paul Klee, you just have imagery. You can make your own narrative. One just hopes that the audience makes his or her own narrative as they go along, seeing the visual language unfold. Because theatre is a performative language, it is a visual language. So one was hoping that that would also be dimensions that could be part of the whole experience. To add to Ipshita's very eloquent reply, I think it is based on text. It is based on words, but as Ipshita very well articulated, that it's also based on the truth of the moment, the visual language, the imagery, the body language. So there are hundreds of other things you factor in. So if you see the work of Pina Bausch, or you see some physical theatre, or as she mentioned, the puppet theatre that impacted her, so I don't know, the actor also, we talk about actor prepares, but the audience also has to prepare.
Any other questions from the audience? Okay, if there isn't any, then I think I'll close this session. I think we're out of time. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Neelam. Thank you, Ipsita. Thank you, everybody. And please stay on. We are going to now have a conversation with Anurupa and the Knights.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Malik. So the next session will be with Anirupa Roy. Welcome you and your group. So Nandadin will have conversation with you.
Please call him. Okay. Ladies, gentlemen, and all in between. The Knights is the first performance in the 15th edition of It Folk. Before going into nights, and Ruba, let's start with your journey with puppets. You have been trained in puppetry, mostly in the Western world. And just like we had a discussion about Hayavadana, about the folk tales which is happening in our land, there are a lot of puppetries also happening as a part of our folklore in our place also, or we can say in the East also. How do you see your journey with proper training in one part of the world and moving this one? Maybe that may be an introduction about your team also, please.
So as people here would know, Kerala has 3 forms of puppet theatre. Most people know the leather shadow puppets, which are called Tol Pavakutu. But there's also Pavakathakali, which is the glove puppet form of Kerala, and as well as the stick puppet form, which is used on the bridge of the nose. I don't know how many of you know of that, which is only performed by women. And possibly there was a giant puppet tradition in Kerala as well, which was the procession puppets. So across India, we know of 23 living traditional forms. I was not trained in any of them. And the interesting aspect of this question is why not? And it's possibly because a lot of traditional puppeteers until very recently trained people only within the community. It is now that they have chosen to open their trainings to other people, possibly because they see how there is a universality, there's people coming together across the world, plus their own young people don't want to follow these traditions. So bitter but truth, but it's a fact. So as far as training goes, yes, having trained in a very, very Western school, when I started, so this training happened at a very early stage in my career when in 2001, and I was already a puppeteer since 1997. So I was trained actually by puppet theatre companies like Dadi Padamji's and Ranjana Pandey and Varun Narayan in Delhi. I worked with them. There were no training programs, we just learnt on the job. We cut up toys, we performed for children, we performed for our friends. That's how we trained ourselves. And then I went to a very strict puppet school, like an art school. But when I came back, this is end of 2001, it was a question of what is Indian puppet theatre for me. And I think that's a journey where someone like Shamim, Avinash, who are both professional puppeteers, also have asked themselves this question of what is contemporary Indian puppet theatre. If we are not traditional performers, if we don't come from generational practitioners of puppetry, then who are we? And I think there the big question, and it's been a constant question for the last 25 years, is what is a puppet? Is it a doll pulled by strings or moved with a stick or something you put your hand into? Is it something which should be visible as if it's magic with no puppeteer visible around it, as was believed for a while? Or is it something more, and is it something about the relationship between this dead material, which is the puppet, could be a doll, could be something else, and the person who is moving this material? Then comes the question of this material doesn't have a voice. A puppet might look very realistic, but you know the sound is not coming from within the puppet. And this is something in this particular production, because Neil wrote for the puppets. It's the first time we've had things like puppets speaking dialogues, so many dialogues in a performance. I mean, we've had speech before, but not maybe so much. A lot more thought, or a lot more of the inner voice of the puppet, not so much conversations between the puppet. So yes, I mean, it's an ongoing journey. Sorry.
Okay, it was interesting to note that the puppeteer also became a character or a performer along with the puppet, along with the show. It was quite interesting because most of the puppeteers were also performers in your play, at least in the nights. Now coming to nights, of course, again it's based on a mythology or a folk tale, whatever we can say. But the text has got a lot of layers, it seems, a lot of philosophy also. At one point of time, there is a dialogue, the dialogue is not exactly remembering, finding truth through deception. Quite interesting because this is a highly philosophical one, and a lot of such philosophical insights and layers are there in the nights. One side, there is a performance with puppets, and people very easily get engaged into that. At the same time, this kind of philosophical insights are also there. How are you blending? You blended beautifully. What was the thought process at least?
And I think I'll let Neil answer
He co-authored
some
the
of it.
text, right?
But just to talk about the puppet part of it, I think the puppet is already there and not there. It's alive, but only in your head. It's not actually alive. So there's a deception, or rather there's a suspension of reality during a puppet performance. And we wanted to keep that alive of how many people do you see at a time? You see the puppet, you see the puppeteer, who's alive, who's not, who's controlling whom, is very much embedded in the philosophy, I think. But maybe...
I think that's it's part of the nature of the Arabian Nights also. I mean, obviously there are several stories. There are over 300 stories, and then several more were written later on. But I think one principle that ties the story, and which is why in the Arabian Nights you find that one story unfolds into another story, is because there's sometimes these philosophical lines through them, which is where they maybe there's a small difference there between them and what one would consider a moral fable, which is where there is a lesson to be learned at the end of each story, and many of them were written for children, whereas the Arabian Nights were not. I mean, we often see Aladdin and all these stories being reimagined for a young audience, but the original Arabian Nights were stories told in markets to people. And if you go through those stories, they're morally very ambiguous. I mean, all the characters are very gray. If there are lessons to be learnt at the end, they're very complex. I mean, and so there is more of a commitment to a kind of philosophical questioning. And I think that maybe that has come into this play, and which is why that's a quality that you have picked up. I don't think intentionally we set out to invest in that element, the philosophical nature of the Arabian Nights. I think it's there in the stories, and I think that's how it's emerged. And also because you picked up that one line about truth and deception, I think characters in the Arabian Nights are always saying things in order to gain something. And so I would be very suspicious also of their philosophical positions, because often they are trying to steal from each other, they're lying to each other, betraying each other. And they use often wisdom and philosophy to kind of captivate each other. And I think that that's also true of some of the characters in the play as well.
Thank you. And another interesting factor which I was able to notice is in the beginning of the play itself, there were two dolls which is almost real-like. The two dolls in the first scene itself, two puppets, almost like real people standing there. And at times, some of the real actor behaving like a puppet with all the body movements. So this juxtaposing these two kind of things, there is one which hasn't got life or which is not real, real in the sense about life. Yeah, that is acting like real, and the real is acting like a puppet. So these kind of things gives a lot of layers. May not be intentional, as you rightly pointed out. The philosophy which is coming out of this one may not be intentional always. There may be intentional, there may be a lot of things intentional. But here, this kind of act gives a lot of sub-layers for this one. Do you, or are you intentionally doing or deliberately doing this kind of thing, or as a performative text, it comes as like that?
I'll speak for the puppet designs. A lot of the layers were quite deliberate because if you see Margina, she is Kriti's face. So we did an impression of her face. If you see Abu Hassan, it's Avinash's face. We wanted to juxtapose the actor puppeteers' faces on the puppets to create a certain duality of when is which one in power, when is which one appearing, disappearing. I think that was quite purposely done. A lot of our other puppet performances have non-realistic faces, very deliberately stylized faces. We chose to have replicas of the actors on stage, keeping in mind that there will be moments of mirroring of the voice within the voice, of whose idea was it, who was controlling whom. So I think one of the things that is recurring in the nights is control, power. Who controls whom? Is the puppet in control? But then you see the puppet who has, the human actor who has hands on his bodies. He is a puppet in the hands of other forces. So that's a continuous, a very deliberate tool that we have used. The metaphor of control in puppetry, and hence looking at which point is which character powerful and when does this power pass to the next.
Quite interesting again. That is the metaphor of controlling. Who is controlling who? Whether puppet or the puppeteer. I would like to hear from actors also, your experience when working with this kind of a theatre. Please.
This is my first time working with puppets. I have no formal training, and every single show is a very humbling experience because, as Anurupa mentioned, you're constantly kind of navigating this relationship between status and attention and power, and I've learned that puppets can be very, very captivating, and so the actor, the human actor, has to work very, very hard to give and take space, attention. It's tough to bring delicacy, but also bring power when working with such strong co-actors who are these puppets on stage. So yeah, I will just say that it's very, very humbling, and it's nice to bring this kind of show and experiment to so many different places.
Okay. जो हमने ये नाटक बनाया है, क्योंकि मेरी ट्रेनिंग जो हुई है पपेटियर ट्रेनिंग हुई है, और अब तक जितना भी शोज़ बनाए हैं हमने मोस्टली नॉन वर्बल प्ले होता था हमारा, म्यूज़िकल प्ले. तो फर्स्ट टाइम डायलॉग वाला प्ले हमने किया है, और फॉर मी एक्चुअली, और इतना सारा डायलॉग्स बैक टू बैक, एंड या सो मेरे लिए भी काफ़ी न्यू एक्सपीरियंस था ये करना, बट वेरी डिफ़िकल्ट था फिर मेरे लिए. हमेशा जो राइटर हैं हमारे अनिल भाई हमेशा बोलते हैं एक्स्ट्रा डायलॉग नहीं बोलना है, क्योंकि ट्रेनिंग ऐसी हुई है मेरी, डायलॉग नहीं बोलना है, पर इतना अब बोलना है तो इतना बोलना है कि चुप नहीं होना है. सो ऑल द टाइम से एक्स्ट्रा डायलॉग नहीं करना है शमीम इस बार प्लीज़. Yeah, but I fun. Thanks.
How about you? Okay, it's okay. Before moving to the audience question, I would like to hear your ITFOK experience.
This is our second time performing in ITFOK. I think we were here in 2012 or 13 with a play, a non-verbal play called About Ram. And I remember performing with these very small puppets in a very big theatre, and we were very worried. But we had a very good response at the end of the play. And I think what is very exciting for us as puppeteers is there are very few spaces in India which are non-puppet theatre spaces where puppetry is welcome as an equal. And otherwise, it's often considered to be children's theatre, that too not good children's theatre, non-serious children's theatre, or a folk theatre of a certain kind, but not for everybody, only for people in villages. So I think this, that mainstream theatre festivals break this norm is very important for us. And that was very significant that you're coming to ITFOK and being in a space with serious theatre. And I think that's always for us, because also we puppeteers are very happy to be in our space. You know, we have little associations and little festivals of our own. We can stay there for the rest of our lives. This becomes an eye-opener for us. We get to see plays, we get to meet actors, actors, theatre directors as we call them, and that's always exciting.
Audience? Please. Just a minute, actually, the microphone is not on.
By the way, first of all, I'm a foreigner, as you see, but I'm 30 years in this place here, and I'm a regular visitor of this ITFOK. So I would focus on what this play made with me. First of all, I'm connected with puppetry a lot because I dived myself a lot in Tolpava. Before it became recognized, now it is recognized, and was quite interested in all the other puppet traditions in India also. So this play yesterday, first of all, fascinated me incredibly in respect to perfectionism, or I thought, oh my God, this is a language that translates our present situation, politically and society, this kind of blurring lines. So, to make a little journey, I grew up as a boy with fairy tales. I grew up in a little village in Germany, and there was this world of fairy tales, the princes and the frog that became a prince. I don't know why it is like this. And the princess. But, you know, basically in getting into adulthood, I realized this was the imaginary world that I left, and I entered into the world of reality. Yeah, with all these aspects. I think at present we reach a society at a frightening point where there are blurred lines. What is real? What is unreal? What is conspiracy? What is the truth? And I felt that your play just made this so perfectly, so I thought this was an intention, to show. Sorry, I don't know. I don't know why. I apologize for this here. So this kind of blurring lines that we are in quite confusing times, a frightening perspective where society goes. Hate, division, power games, and so on. So, as far as I said already, I was fascinated by you as actors, the way you use. The way you just enacted this whole play. On the other side, I felt, oh my God, the storyline is depressing. If I would not be a life-affirming person, because the bottom line of my life is, however I can look on life, there is no rational alternative to optimism. Yeah? And especially when I'm dealing with young people, that interests me as the next generation of those who shape the future. My generation has done their job. Yeah? And I don't want to be judgmental about what we leave. Then I will say the young generation has a right of hope, has a right to dream, as we had. And there I'm at a loss to deal with your play. And this would I leave with you as a question to you, if you are aware about it.
Yes, actually we are. I think the play was also made as a response to an extremely, the two characters, Shahrazad and Shahryar, are metaphors for the times. The big omnipresent king who slaughters these women night after night. And then this very quiet voice which builds this, web of stories and pulls him in. For us, the only hope is the little voice in times like this. It's the David and Goliath story again. And I think for us, it is bleak times, very bleak. And their only hope is that maybe this is a dream within a dream within a dream. So one of the things with the Nights is it talks about la makam, that you're constantly in a waking dream. So we don't end the play. Maybe even the last scene is a dream or another story which is about to begin. And I think that's the hope. So.
Any other questions?
Yeah, just one question. It's normally viewed as a modern interpretation of Arabian Nights. Hello. Yeah, it's having a. Yeah, you have based the subject on the Arabian Nights. I would just conclude, just to know the reason why you have based it on Arabian Nights and why you draw the theme, or why you took Arabian Nights for your play, just based it on Arabian Nights.
I think, like I was saying, it's a reflection of what's happening right now. I mean, how do we as individuals deal with absolute power and absolutism, you know, where the state structure is controlling everything, the way you think, eat, sleep, what you say, what you do. That's the metaphor for the nights. It's someone who is telling stories because she's in a situation which is terrible. There's a mad king who is slaughtering women every night. She has nothing. He's armed, he has henchmen, he has an army. She is only armed with her stories. And it is a look at the times, and if you look at the number of times the Arabian Nights were performed in the last 1,000 years, it's very often in dire political situations. It's one of those stories which have been used over and over again in particular circumstances. And for us it was hence an obvious go-to. Like I said, it's a David and Goliath metaphor. Very big, very insurmountable powers versus the small common person, the individual. What do they have? How resourceful are they? They have nothing but their imagination. They have nothing but the stories, nothing but their speech to combat this. And that was the basic idea.
And just to connect the two questions, I never really saw the Arabian Nights as being bleak, because I feel like Sherazad's act of voluntarily entering into this union with Shahryar is an act of radical optimism. I mean, she believes that she can kind of stop whatever is happening. And it's an act of optimism that, depending on your interpretation of the text, turns into an act of love. And that to me is kind of very still, I don't quite understand it, but it's quite beguiling about the Arabian Nights, is that if you're reading the Arabian Nights, along the way, with Shahryar, you forget what has happened before the stories began. You start to forget, you start to be so immersed in the storytelling that you forget the context with which the stories began. And you start to recognize that there might possibly be love between the two of them. And there have been several very famous writers and thinkers who have tried to imagine what happens after the Arabian Nights. I mean, what is the ending of this loop, and how does it move forward, and what happens to Shahryar? And those are also, I think, hopeful questions to me. And I think that we also had that sense when we began working on this.
Any other questions? So, stories in stories, dreams in dreams. Let your dream continue. Wish you all the best for today's performance. Also at 3 o'clock there is another show of the Nights. If you haven't seen Nights so far, please do enter into Black Box at 3 p.m. Wish you all the best.
Thank you. Thank you.
Chi, ek, chi, 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 e, chi, long, e, chi, chi.